Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle D'Souza Gill. I will be hosting Dinesh's podcast while he is away this week in Israel. If you're a regular Dinesh D'Souza podcast listener, you've probably heard me on here before, although it has been a little while. I'm frequently busy being a mom to my daughter Marigold, supporting my husband's role in U.S. Congress. We live in North Texas, and I'm having a baby in about 2 weeks, so wish me luck there. This is the second baby. But I always love coming on to guest host. I really miss you guys. But the best way you can find out more about me is to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, all those places. I'm at Danielle D'Souza Gill. And beware, if you do follow my Facebook page, I post many times a day, so this will be blowing up your newsfeed. But it's all good news, thank goodness, because we have President Trump back in office. So you need all this information ASAP, so make sure to find me, Danielle D'Souza Gill, on all platforms, and that's where you can find content, videos, all those things. Well, we have a lot to get to today. We are going to be speaking with Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins about Trump's first 100 days in office. She's going to tell us a little bit about the White House Easter egg roll, which is today, and a little bit more on some policy issues. By the way, hope everyone had an amazing Easter weekend. He is risen, and we're going to be still talking about Easter today as well. Easter Monday. And then we'll also speak with writer and podcast host Ryan Grdusky about his thoughts on the state of the Democrat Party. We'll talk about AOC, Bernie Sanders rallies, as well as where the Democrats plan to be moving forward with in the midterms. And so, yeah, this will be fun. And this is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
In a recent interview on a podcast, journalist and neoconservative commentator Douglas Murray underscored the necessity of free speech in a society. He points out that unless a society embraces freedom of religion and expression and speech, those societies will stagnate until they can no longer fix their mistakes. If you are in error, you cannot correct it. This is what John Stuart Mill, for instance, one of the great philosophers on liberty, unpacks in one of his most famous works. That the necessity of free speech in a society comes about in part because if you are wrong, you need to know you are wrong. Looking back over the past quarter millennium of America's meteoric rise as a major superpower and cultural influence on the global stage, it's easy to see the role the freedom of speech has played in the fostering of what can only be described as American greatness. At least, that's how things used to be in this country. Over the past few years, our cultural institutions, corrupted by Chinese communist influence, USAID dollars, and leftist dogma, have vocally embraced closed-mindedness. They shout dissenting voices out of the public square and off college campuses. They label criticism of counterarguments to their agenda as violence. They openly proclaim their goal to cull conservative ideas from the internet, going so far as to arrest those who stoke their ire. The American left has absolutely zero tolerance for free speech, and in their agonized throes of frustration over the future of their party, we see the fulfillment of John Stuart Mill's maxim on free speech. It is clear that the Democrat Party is fundamentally incapable of course correcting. After a humiliating defeat in November, the Democrat Party came together to elect new leadership. The spectacle of this event is memorable for its insane debates and long-winded explanations on the use of pronouns. It became clear from that moment that the Democrat Party was not interested in distancing itself from themes and goals repugnant to the majority of the human race. And in subsequent public appearances, those jockeying for the position of leader of the Democrats have doubled down on these same ideas in order to curry favor with the party base. You have AOC and Bernie Sanders holding rallies against the oligarchy, despite the fact that she's flying first class and he has more mansions than most middle-class Americans have pairs of shoes. You have Gavin Newsom flashing his smile and oiled hairdo, insisting that he's qualified to run for president, despite the fact that California has never been in worse shape. And of course, we can't all forget his response to the California fires. Of course, like any other Democrat, Newsom is mentally incapable in admitting his policies have played any role in turning that once great state into a literal burned out husk. And we can't forget Tim Walz, Tampon Tim. Will he ever go away? He's desperately clutching for everyman credibility by cracking glib jokes meant to embolden the left's activists into violent retaliation against other Democrats who own Teslas. This is bad. Not only is it impossible for anyone on the left to bring the party to heel, but now the party is living in total opposition to reality itself. The left stands in opposition to Trump, claiming that he's helping billionaires, all while ignoring the fact that more billionaires back the Democrats than the Republicans. In the recent special election in Wisconsin, Susan Crawford bragged about beating billionaire backer Elon Musk in the race for a position on the state Supreme Court. In fact, Crawford had more billionaire backers, and according to Ballotpedia, both raised and spent twice as much as her competitor, Brad Schimmel. And when Trump leveraged tariffs to bring industry and jobs back to America, Democrats became apoplectic over the stock market chaos which was mostly strongly experienced by the billionaire class. Democrats aren't anti-billionaire. The truth is, they're in the pocket of billionaires. They have massive fundraisers with all of those people, celebrities, George Clooney. But that's not all. Democrats shriek in horror at muddy footprints in the nation's capital, and yet openly embrace random acts of political violence as a form of speech. In their railings against Doge, they revealed themselves to be guardians of the wealthy and powerful, staking out positions in defense of waste, corruption, crime, and ruin. Democrats not only have lost the capacity to correct from error, they no longer see themselves for who they are. It's like Joy Behar looking into the mirror only to see the K-pop singer Jisoo from Blackpink looking back at her. Detached from reality and completely incapable of pulling back from her perilous course, it's no wonder that the only people interested in leading this clown car of a political party of tax grifters are themselves clowns. They go to paid and staged rallies or act like the opening act at the local Chuckle Hut. They make TikToks about being resistance girl bosses or pull meaningless stunts like a 24-hour-long non-filibuster. But what are Democrats actually doing? As in, what about their representatives? What about the people they've elected? Ask any Democrat what they've accomplished in Congress last week, and you will get nothing but failure, because all they can do right now is complain. Let's list the 5 bullet points they would use to justify their employment. 1. Oppose Doge's anti-corruption efforts by demonizing Elon Musk. That probably takes up a good portion of their week. 2. Oppose Trump by getting mad at him if the stock market falls. 3. Oppose Trump again by getting mad at him if the stock market rises. 4. Oppose the deportation of dangerous illegal immigrants who have killed Americans or who have ties to notorious evil gangs like MS-13. And number 5, they spend their week opposing tax cuts and limiting government regulation. All these begin with the same word, oppose. That's because the Democratic Party platform has only one principle right now: to oppose anything President Trump does, anything his administration does. But who is Donald Trump? Broadly speaking, he's a Republican, but he's also MAGA. He's a populist. So what is a populist? According to the Cambridge Dictionary, populism consists of political ideas and activities that are intended to get the support of ordinary people by giving them what they want. Sounds remarkably democratic to me. But wait a second, are Democrats so against President Trump that they're willing to be anti-democratic? Actually, they are. And here's a better question. Is there anything about this party that isn't a complete lie? A good leader of the Democratic Party in a situation like this would try to steer the party away from its knee-jerk reactions and convince people that, hey, this is what people voted for, so we have to accept that. In order to survive, we need to embrace some of the things that President Trump is doing. You can't be anti-populist 100% of the time and expect to be popular with voters anymore. At least that's how a sane and rational person would approach the problem that the Democrats are facing as far as their unpopularity. But look who we're dealing with here. Democrats. They never back down on their principles like this. And just what is the opposite of populism? What should we call this political philosophy the left clings to so bitterly? Unpopulism? To be unpopular only means you're not liked. But the Democrat platform of men and women's sports, child genital mutilation, shrinking job markets, putting America last, embezzling taxpayer dollars, continuing waste, fraud, and abuse in our bureaucratic government, it's deeply abhorrent to most people. So there's the word for it. Abhorrentism. Democrats have embraced it. Maybe the reason such a party lacks leadership is that it's impossible to be led if you're in a suicide pact with reality and refuse to face the music. Recently, in another podcast, comedian Bill Maher suggested that in order to fight against America First and Donald Trump, the Democrats need their own leader of the same stature. They need a Donald Trump. But if you look at Democrats' past pleas to use tariffs to repatriate jobs and industries to the United States and then compare it to their present-day reaction to Trump's tariffs, you realize that Trump's biggest crime in their eyes was to prove to the Republicans that these were good ideas. It was Trump who moved the American political right to embrace a lot of older ideas that many on both sides used to agree on. Now, the left, of course, doesn't want to use reason. They just want to continue to demonize Trump or any Republican because they have an R next to their name. Trump has also opened up the right to work with labor unions, stop forever wars. Maher has recently met with President Trump in person at the White House. The meeting appears to have changed his understanding of Trump's personality. Maher claims that there's a gulf between how President Trump himself presents himself in public and who he is in private. Now, I have not really found that to be the case, to be completely honest with you. I have met him before, and I have found that he is incredibly genuine in person, and he really is that person in interviews too. He is actually quite honest with people. But what Maher has noticed is not that Trump hides behind a political persona, but that the media relentlessly recontextualizes everything he says and does so to make him sound evil, all of those things. And I agree with that because the media definitely is wildly leftist and headlines are going to be completely skewed, clipped, all those things. No one who supports Trump believes the fake news media's portrayal of him is some sort of real-life super villain. But clearly, Maher did, at least to some extent, actually believe the media, I guess because he's part of the liberal mass media. So there's a question as to whether Maher was duped or if he allowed his biases to blind him to the truth. And to be honest, I think a lot of those liberal talking heads live in their own bubble. They only talk to each other, listen to each other. They obviously don't engage with any normal Americans, and they also don't bother to even meet someone like Trump in person. I mean, Trump has been on the world stage since, well, he's been a big figure for a long time, but running for president in 2015, and now it's 2025, 10 years later, and you've all of a sudden decided to actually talk to this person who you've been trashing for years. So you would think these people would do a little bit more journalism, but no, they instead just focus on their talking points. But you'd think someone known for his kind of smart takes, media savvy like Bill Maher wouldn't be so easily led by this, but he was. There's an undercurrent of anger in his response during his episode of his show immediately following that meeting, and that anger is most likely directed at others in the media. It's clear that he is still working through all of this because he's finally seeing the truth. But many of us have been processing this for a decade and grappling with how we deal with a media that doesn't at all care about truth, that doesn't at all care about disseminating information to the American people. They only care about being Trump haters and Republican haters. And that's why most Americans don't trust the mainstream media anymore. And many have turned to podcasts, alternative media, because they realize that there's absolutely no point in turning on a show like MSNBC. So I think that that's something a lot of Trump supporters can see ahead of someone like Maher. So hopefully sometime soon, Maher will revisit his idea that the left needs its own leader to step in, lead the party, and actually respond to the American people. Because when you're talking about a populist, when you're talking about MAGA, you're dealing with someone who takes the most popular ideas from the middle of the aisle. I think many people will benefit, for example, from no tax on tips, whether or not you are a waitress who is Republican or Democrat. This is going to be something that affects working Americans all over the country. And something that Trump does really well is he's taken many of his cues from the people themselves, not from talking heads or from these experts and so on. And he really thinks about what normal people would benefit from. So if you think about it, the Democrats already have their own vision, which is anti-populism. They're going to keep on going down this road of derangement. And President Trump is going to keep on working for all of us.
Tariffs have thrown the global economy into chaos. Potential widespread inflation tied to massive supply chain disruptions is weighing heavily on all of us. But there's a silver lining that most people miss. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from these sweeping tariffs. Policies are triggering significant financial chaos. The administration preserved your ability to diversify into precious metals. If you're concerned about your savings, I encourage you to have a free consultation with the Birch Gold Precious Metals Specialist. The first step is to text Dinesh, my name, Dinesh, to 989898. You'll get a free, no obligation information kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax-sheltered account. Birch Gold will help you to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of pocket. Debbie and I buy our gold from Birch Gold. It's time you did too. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy and thankful customers. Text my name Dinesh to the number 989898. Again, text Dinesh to 989898. You can claim your free information kit on gold right now.
I am delighted to welcome to the show Secretary Brooke Rollins, our fantastic Secretary of Agriculture. Prior to this, from 2003 to 2018, she led the Texas Public Policy Foundation. In between Donald Trump's first and second administrations, she co-founded the America First Policy Institute, a think tank established to promote Trump's public policy agenda. Secretary Rollins, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh my goodness, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm such a big fan, and I was honored to be an ambassador to America First Policies, so I'm a longtime fan. But today is the White House Easter egg roll, which is this special event where President Trump visits with families outside the White House. I heard you had a little something special for the Super Bowl for eggs, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you're up to today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it is my honor to be on with you and a longtime fan of you and your family and everything you've done for freedom. So God bless you for that. Yes. So today is the Easter egg roll at the White House, of course, celebrating Easter. And, Danielle, it just occurred to me, remember a year ago, basically today, when the Biden White House was talking about transgenderism and celebrating transgender, and they had the big flags on the white, and they didn't even really talk about Jesus or Easter or why we are celebrating. Anyway, it's just remarkable what a difference 1 year can make and why leadership matters and policy matters. So a little bit of an aside, I don't mean to get off course here, but I am, as soon as we finish today with you, as soon as I finish this quick interview, I'm running over to the White House, going to take part in the Easter egg roll, a tradition of the White House since 1878, if you can imagine that, where we've got thousands of kids who come in and families who come in and they get to do a little Easter egg hunting. I get to participate because I'm reading a book and selected a book on the importance of Jesus and Easter, but also weaving eggs into it. And of course, now is I think I'm on day 65 as the Secretary of Agriculture. Who knew when the president called me about this job back in November that eggs were going to be such a big deal, because obviously the prices went sky high under Joe Biden. We've worked really hard to bring them down under Donald Trump with great success. And so it's a big day all around, lots of reasons to celebrate.
Wow, well, that's incredibly exciting. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about, what has been your main focus in these last, it hasn't been super long so far, but President Trump works at such a rapid pace and rapid speed. And so you've already been getting so much done, but what do you think have been the main things of your focus so far?
Well, it's interesting because all of us in the cabinet are we're here to effectuate President Trump's vision. And this time is so different than Trump 1. I was in the first Trump administration, years 2, 3, and 4. I was part of his domestic policy team, worked across all the domestic policy issues, taxes, healthcare, government overregulation, criminal justice reform, agriculture. It was all part of my portfolio last time, and worked with his cabinet then. And listen, they were all really impressive and patriotic Americans. I think that the first Trump administration, so much was accomplished. It speaks for itself. But this time is different, and it's different for a lot of reasons. Obviously, President Trump, and I think most Americans believe that it's a miracle that he survived an assassination attempt and then ended up winning even the popular vote in the last election with every odd against him, frankly. It is a miracle that the cabinet that he has put together, we're all friends and family and all love each other and are here not for any reason other than to save America and to implement the president's vision. It's a miracle that I think there's so much that has already been achieved. You just looked at the border security numbers. You look at the peace through strength around the world. Everything that's happening. Inflation's already coming down for the first time since Trump, before COVID. We've got inflation coming down. Jobs are going up. It's already working, and we're just 60 plus, 90 plus days in. So that's pretty incredible. For me personally, as the Secretary of Agriculture, I've been really focused, well, first of all, on the egg piece, but grocery prices in general, obviously on trade and opening up new markets, as we're in a time of uncertainty, and our farmers and ranchers, the president is wholly focused on ensuring that they have the markets that they need to be able to sell their product at a margin of profitability that perhaps they haven't seen in our lifetime. So that's been a huge focus. A lot of people don't know that USDA implements the SNAP program, which is the food stamp program. So really working to realign that program with those who truly need it. The Biden administration blew it up with a lot of money that wasn't necessary, as they did across the federal government. So ensuring that we're realigning that. But ultimately, my goal is that in 4 years, we look back and we see all of these policy changes along the way in the agriculture sector, that we do bring an unprecedented era of prosperity to our farmers and our ranchers and rural America, that I think for so long, other than a little blip in Trump 1, a little glimpse of what it could be in Trump 1, has really been ignored by both the Republicans and Democrats. Not ignored, but perhaps not the focus that is necessary to revivify that era, an area of America that is the backbone of our country. So those are kind of some of the initial teams and projects and visions and strategies we're putting together here at USDA.
Yeah. And I noticed that you were recently in West Texas, which is so exciting. Brandon, my husband, actually grew up in Abilene, so we're big fans of that area. But what do you think can be done to prevent, foreign influence on U.S. farmland, things like that? Because I know a lot of farmers, ranchers, they're wanting to keep their family farms and way of life going. And I know that's something people have talked about, and Trump cares so much about our farmers. So was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yes, well, the current number is that China has, in the last number of years, purchased 350,000 acres of our farmland. Just think about what that means, right? It's not just a food security. It's not just a supporting American products and putting America first. It's a national security issue. And so we have already begun working with the states, a lot of great states. One of them was South Dakota under then Governor Kristi Noem, had already made moves to stop it. Florida, Governor DeSantis, I know Texas has looked at it very closely. That also working alongside our friends in Congress, your husband and others, to ensure that we are doing everything we can to put America first.
Yes, well, thank you so much for working on that, because I know our farmers and ranchers really appreciate everything that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for all of your hard work, and I hope you have a great time today at the Easter egg roll. And we're just saying hello from all of your fans in Texas.
Oh, Danielle, thank you. It is such a joy to be on with you, and I hope everyone is wearing hot pink like you
yes.
and I are today. I hope everybody got the memo. It is Easter egg roll day, but really, it's so great to be on with you. And anytime, so happy to join, and really an honor.
Thank you. Well, God bless, and talk to you soon.
Thank you. God bless you.
Debbie and I are tired of looking for good movies to watch. We're tired of destructive, perverse content flooding our screens. This is why I joined the Angel Guild community. I wanted entertainment that inspires and uplifts and doesn't drag us down. With Angel Guild, I can vote on upcoming films, support movies that reflect values that I align with. Plus, I get early access to inspiring content. I no longer have Hollywood entertainment pushing its agenda into my home. Angel Studios is leading the charge, creating high-quality, faith-filled films like Sound of Freedom, Cabrini, and Homestead. These movies are powerful, impactful, and must-see if you haven't already. If you want to make a real difference, where we put our dollars shapes the future of entertainment. Let's support content that amplifies light and protects our kids from harmful influences. Join me in making a difference today by visiting angel.com/Dinesh. That's angel.com/Dinesh to join the Angel Guild now. MyPillow is extending the mega sale. It's a sale on overstock, on clearance, but also on brand new products. It's your chance to grab some incredible deals on some of MyPillow's most popular and newly released items. For example, save $40 on the new spring MyPillow bed sheets, available in any size and any color. Debbie and I use these. We love them. The luxurious sheets are designed for maximum comfort and breathability. They're perfect for a great night's sleep. Looking for a meaningful gift? Save 30% on the brand new My Crosses, inspired by the one Mike Lindell has worn every day for over 20 years. These beautifully crafted crosses come in both men's and women's designs and are proudly made in the USA. Get the 6-piece bath or kitchen towel sets, just $39.98. Initial quantities are low, so don't wait. And don't forget the best-selling standard MyPillow, now just $17.98. Plus orders over $75, ship free. Call 800-876-0227. Again, it's 800-876-0227, or go to mypillow.com. Don't forget to use the promo code. It's DINESH, Dinesh.
I'm delighted to welcome to the show Ryan Grdusky. He's one of our great friends, and he's also the author of They're Not Listening: How the Elites Created the Populist Revolution. And he is also the host of a podcast called The Numbers Game. Ryan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Danielle.
Well, I want to begin by, aside from asking you about your favorite hobbies, which we talked about before this, but by asking you to tell us a little bit about where you think the Democrats are right now. So the Democrats, they've tried to focus all of their ire on Trump. Of course, that was their focus the last 8 years or longer. And that didn't really work for them. Trump won. He won the popular vote. You know, he had a big landslide win. So they need some kind of identity moving forward that isn't just anti-Trumpism. And I know you've been on CNN and you've interacted with some leftists over there. So what do you think their new messaging is going to be, their new angle?
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and television interviews with like Rob Emanuel and AOC and a bunch of other people. And there seems to be multiple different narratives that they're going for. So if you look at like the Chris Van Hollens of the world, they think going to El Salvador is a very great idea. Like it's like a solid like idea for their party, that they're going to be the party of law and order, which is kind of hysterical. And if you look at like the AOCs, they've focused less on that and more on a more liberal populist message. And then if you look at like a Rahm Emanuel or the senator from Michigan, They've said, stop talking about immigration enforcement. Let's talk about the economy. The economy is not good. We're missing the economy. So there's three different wings to that party. One that really is doubling down on the failed policies of Biden, one that's looking for a more populist message, and one who's looking for a more centrist message. And I think one of them has to win out. Like one of those groups will win out. But it may take like over a year to figure it out as they parse through and figure out what it is. And they're kind of like living on the laurels of having won or done very well in special elections and non-presidential elections since the November election. But that's really not enough to sit there and build a party off of, because a lot of people have done well, opposite parties have done well in special elections. They need a real leader, and I think they're still trying to figure out who that is.
What do you think? Do you think their new leaders are going to be Bernie and AOC, who have been doing these rallies around the country? Do you think they're going to lean into the most progressive wing like that because they can bring in these crowds? Or do you think they're going to learn from 2024 and try to reach the center?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the 2020 election, right, where Biden won by 50,000 votes in 3 states, right? Now imagine Bernie being that nominee, right? Bernie, who isolates suburbanites, isolates people who are well-to-do, isolates Jews even more, isolates a lot of people. What difference? I mean, if Kamala Harris couldn't win and she was looking more moderate, and Biden barely won and he was more moderate, and Hillary barely lost, right, even though she was more moderate, what are the chances? All three candidates are more moderate than Bernie Sanders is, or more moderate than, not only in policy, but most importantly in tone, than AOC is. AOC, this is going to sound like kind of scattered brain, but listen to this. I don't doubt that Hillary Clinton loves America. She doesn't have the same vision for it that I do. I don't really doubt that Joe Biden loves America, although he has a different vision for it I do. The thing that turned voters off to Kamala Harris a lot is her tone of like, America owes me in some way something. It was very divisive, very negative in a certain way. And I think AOC is all of those qualities, and all those negative qualities, to the 10th degree. I think AOC comes off as extremely, extremely naive on policy and extremely condescending towards regular people. And AOC's district was the second most Republican swing district that swung second most Republican in the country in the last election.
Wow. And her district is so Democrat. Super
Democrat. I live right next to her. I'm in the district next door. For that, if there are parts of that district that voted for Trump, that if you would have go on a time machine and say, Ryan, like 2009, you think this area will ever go Republican? I'd say never in a million years. If Jesus Christ was on the ticket, I wouldn't vote for Republicans. So the fact that it did is jaw-dropping. And the fact that her district moved 20 points to the right, 25 points to the right, what has she learned? Like, what is she doing to sit there and reassemble that for her? Nothing. And I think that all the negative qualities of Kamala are really, really, really present in AOC. And also, last point to finish off with, I don't think Democrats are going to nominate a woman again.
Even if she was like a VP and Bernie was running for president?
Bernie's going to be 177,000 years old. Bernie, like, I know the history of the country. He's listen. I mean, I guess in Vermont it's so cold it preserves you for the winter. I don't know. It's just he's there with the mittens and the hat on, and he's just still going. He's in his mid 80s. He would be close to 100 if he ran for president in 2028 and won and tried to serve 2 terms. He would be close to 100 when he ended. This is the most geriatric nation on the planet at this point. That we literally. What?
Yeah, it seems like, though, they must have some goal in what they're doing. I guess they're true believers in their cause, but
Well, I think
I
it's to
mean,
run AOC,
organizing
not to
these
run
things,
Bernie.
what do you think their angle is?
Well, I think it's to run AOC, not to run Bernie. I think his
Oh, I
time is
see.
come and gone. I think it's to run her. I just don't think the Democratic Party is there. I don't think black voters are really there. If you look at their crowds are old. They're older, white, mostly white, liberal MSNBC viewers. That's really who's attending these audiences. If you look at um, the Charlie Kirk rallies at TPUSA, I mean, there are our college campuses, it's a little different, but they're large and they're young and they're more diverse and they are reaching out to different audiences. And, you know, there was a study by Yale University. I don't know if you saw this. Yale University did a poll of the 2026 midterms, and they asked voters on different age ranges who they tend to vote for. The most Republican voting bloc in this country are voters between the ages of 18 to 21. They are R plus 12, which is shocking. It's a little scary because young people don't usually vote that often, but they are the most Republican group in this country. And seniors, as the silent generation and the greatest generation, have mostly passed on or are not in their numbers that they once were, and baby boomers are seniors now. You know, we replaced Archie Bunker with Jane Fonda. That's who senior citizens are now. So they are not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them. So they have become more liberal as time has gone on, and the liberal people from 20 years ago are now just seniors. And we are going to see what that means for a midterm election and a presidential election. But the future of the people who had their lives disrupted because of COVID are really, really, really Republican. And let's look at these Bernie Sanders rallies, and they look like MSNBC audiences. So I think that they're missing their mark. And I think if you look at a candidate like a Wes Moore, who I think would be the strongest Democrat right now, he's great record, governor of a state, black man, he's got a lot of things going for him as far as Democratic identity politics go. Far stronger and doesn't turn people off the way that like an AOC does. And she just turns people off.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like you mentioned, oh, Biden and Hillary, they care about the country. I feel like Biden and Hillary cared so much about themselves and were involved in so much corruption. But someone like AOC, not that she's not corrupt, but she really is a lot more socialist. She really has these strong ideological views. And I think most Americans aren't socialists. They don't actually have that true belief in that sense. And so in some ways, I feel like she doesn't relate to a lot of people.
Well, what I was going to say about
activist.
Well, okay, obviously the Clinton Foundation was incredibly corrupt. Obviously, Joe Biden, with his connection to his son, was incredibly corrupt. I'm not saying that they were not corrupt, but I think they come from a time period and a place where they are. They didn't make it so much about their politics, didn't make it so much about their own victimization, and they didn't view themselves, even Hillary, didn't view herself that often as a woman who has had all these obstacles placed in front of her because she's a woman. Once in a while, she'd bring up, but most people would talk about her in that context, but she wouldn't talk about herself in that context. AOC and Kamala. But AOC, even worse than Kamala, views everything on the spectrum of gender, race, sexual identity, every kind of category. And they break you down based on every kind of category, and they break themselves down based on every kind of category. And that kind of language towards human beings as just components of different races and ethnicities and sexes and sexual identities and all the rest of it, religions, whatever it may be, that is extremely off-putting to people. That kind of conversation, that's what the left has like lost their minds about, is you can't say this because of yada, 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 yada. And even if you listen to, there was a woman I used to do a show on, this is really funny. I used to do a show on this woman, she had a podcast called like Political Queen, Political Girl, whatever the hell it was. Anyway, she knew nothing about politics, which was hysterical that she had a show about politics. And she's going to see with me, perfectly lovely backstage, right? Very, very nice Canadian woman, sweetheart, on stage, on camera, crazy. She was just always unhinged and nuts. And she was convinced that Kamala will be president, Trump was going to lose. Everyone was crazy besides her. Anyway, I listened to her podcast, I listened to it like yesterday, her post-election podcast. And not only is she like completely in shock and doesn't know how to process and all the rest of this nonsense. And, tyranny is on the rise. And whenever liberals say like tyranny is coming, I like have to laugh because they're crazy. But the thing that was shocking about it, and the reason why her politics are so off-putting, because it was literally, she said, what did she say? She said, white people have failed black women once again. That's what she said on the podcast. And I was like, see, the fact that you broke it down like that is why you can't understand why people don't like to talk to you or listen to you. And that's AOC. And that is Kamala Harris. And that is the whole thing of all you are is what organs you have in your body and what and what your skin color is. And that's it. That's all it matters to them, who you are and your worth in society.
Yeah. Maybe can you share with us a little bit about their strategy, though, of just increasing their turnout? They don't really want to even bother to reach middle people because they're just going to have so many, people who are far left or who never vote or all this other stuff show up. Would that be their strategy, I guess, if they run an AOC? Yeah. And it also seems like they're not willing to back down on a lot of issues. So one example is transgenderism. Obviously, President Trump's ad about that, that he's for you, not they, them. I mean, that was one of the most popular ads, but yet the Democrats, obviously, they have a transgender congressman. They are very... and Nancy Pelosi's dug in on this issue. They still act like they're going to be unmitigated on the trans issue, because if they concede any level on the trans issue, I think their argument basically collapses, because either this is a man or a woman, So it seems like they're not willing to moderate on that, even though it's such a radical issue. So if they don't want to moderate on certain issues,
it's like the immigration issue. They just can't accept that they're so far out of the mainstream. And by the way, they would sit there and turn around, by the way. What their defense would be, they would turn around and say, well, Americans want more gun control, but you won't concede on that, right? That's what their argument would be, is like, oh, this is just for speaking to our base. But if you read that, David Shore is a data scientist, a liberal data scientist, and he's a genius. He's so smart. And he did this whole breakdown of the 2024 election. And he said that had every person in the country been forced to vote, Trump would not have won by 1 point. Trump would have won by 5 points in the popular vote. He would have flipped another 4 or 5 more states. Because the overarching opinion of low propensity voters is more center-right, and the opinion of younger voters is more center-right. What they're planning on doing, what they are doing, they benefit from a lower turnout midterm off-year election, because high propensity college educated voters are more liberal right now. They are. They're just, that's how it has changed in the last, when I was younger, it was never like this, but it is like this now. And the number one attack line that Democrats, according to the David Shore data, the number one attack line Democrats can use against Republicans is, you are giving tax cuts to the rich. It was the number one, even more than abortion. Abortion actually wasn't even very high ranking at all, but abortion or DEI or healthcare. Healthcare was second, but the number one was tax cuts for the rich. And I think, and there's conversations that Trump is going to trade in tax deductions for wealthy income earners in order to get the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, which, by the way, was the number one, according to David Shore data, number one attack line pro-Republican. So what they're going to do, and what they have been doing, Chris Pappas, who's running for Senate in New Hampshire, he did his first ad. Trump's not mentioning it at all. Elon's mentioning it. Elon Musk, wealthy people, tax cuts, plutocrats, big tech. They're trying to weave it in and say, look at the Republican Party. They are the party of the wealthy. We're the party of the workers. It is not true statistically. It's not true by voting patterns. It's not true by data. But that is what they have to run on. And that's what they're going to run on. And that's what you see in the AOC and the Bernie Sanders rallies is, we are not the party of the tax cuts for the rich and the billionaires. They are.
What do you think is their focus? Like, what's their goal in attacking Elon Musk? I mean, I guess they realized, hey, attacking Trump doesn't really solve anything anymore. He obviously won. So maybe we shouldn't just keep talking about Trump. So we'll just put everything onto Elon. But obviously, Elon was not born in this country. He cannot be president. He is part of the administration right now, but he's also a business owner and has his own life. So I guess they're doing these paid protests. They're going to Teslas. They're making everything about Elon, but I don't know if that's gonna work. I mean, does that work for 4 years to attack Elon?
Well, no, it doesn't work for 4 years, I don't think. But the thing is that Elon is, if you look at polls, Elon is much more unpopular personally than Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is Donald Trump is much more popular than he was the first go around. Much more popular than the first time he was president. And his numbers I had a pollster on my podcast, A Numbers Game, and he said Trump has inelastic numbers. He doesn't go much higher than what he has. He doesn't go much lower. His base is everyone has an opinion of him, and there's really very, very little movement up or down in the polls. And that's despite anything the media says or tariffs or whatever. It's just their people are very, they either trust him or they don't. Elon has very high negative numbers because, one, he is the wealthiest person in the world and people don't trust a lot of power and wealth, but also because he's a bit of a weird guy, 25,000 children with different women. He believes in having chips in people's brains and having, interplanetary life. And, tech people tend to be a little strange. And he has.
What they're attacking him for is Doge. And Doge is really just getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. But I guess the left acts like, oh, we're cutting your Social Security, when in fact they're not actually taking
going after
real people off Social Security. These are dead people and frauds instances.
Right. Well, the problem that the admin has suffered from is you've had the admin has had Elon say that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, which just don't say that on television, even if you believe it. And the Secretary of Commerce has said, if you miss your Social Security checks, it doesn't matter. That's very bad communication, Danielle. You just don't say those kinds of things on camera. And I don't know if no one coached them or what the case may be, but they've said them now multiple times. What I think the thing with Doge is that they're going after him for, and you are correct, it is mostly about Doge, is they're saying, look at all these wonderful government employees, that are just doing the Lord's work each and every day. And they're also saying that he's taking your data for some reason. And that he's doing it without the law abiding by it. And he is doing this to assume more power and more information and more to benefit for himself and his wealth of his company. I don't know that to be true. I don't know it not to be true. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters that it's said out loud to make this administration feel like it is for sale by billionaires, by wealthy people. We have a wealthy president. We have a wealthy secretary of Treasury. Now we have Elon Musk in the room. We have big tech coming in and out of the White House constantly asking for favors. This makes people suspicious of stuff. If the admin wants to sit there and score points, it's possible. And they don't have to fire Elon to do it. I think creating and pushing forward that bill where congressmen can't do stock trading would be a very positive development, since we see Nancy Pelosi making a ton of money constantly on these stock trades. I think doing stuff like this would be a benefit on behalf of proving that he's out there. I will say the one benefit that Trump has now, more than he had the first term, more than any Republicans had in my lifetime, is that when you ask people, is Trump fighting for you? The numbers are very high. They're significantly higher than they were the first time, because he is perceived more as a working class president than he was back in 2017. And that's a very good thing. And that is something that Democrats will have a very tough time shaking.
Yeah. And many people know that he's a billionaire. He's incredibly successful, but I think they still feel like he fights for them. So it's not as much about, oh my gosh, are you this elite person or not? But all of his policies are fighting for regular Americans.
But FDR was a wealthy person. Remember, most populist figures in our history are wealthy people. Very few, if working class people don't really have the time to go into politics. It's wealthy people who speak for populist issues and populist people. Whether it's Nigel Farage, who was a trader, business trader, Marine Le Pen's from a very prominent legal family. Donald Trump is a billionaire. Giorgia Meloni is not poor. There are not working class people do not take up this mantle. It's usually wealthy people who get it. And Trump is one of them who gets it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think people just care about what you do. Are you going to do things that benefit my life? Are you going to do the things you said you were going to do? Not as much the personal stuff anymore, which I feel like used to be this huge thing. If,
Yeah, of course.
I don't know, something in your past or whatever. And people are kind of just like, we just don't care about that stuff anymore. We just care about what you're doing.
We're more desanitized to it all, but it's also a matter of people feel like for the last 30 years that really Washington has been out to attack them. And a lot of people feel like Trump is their only option as far as their only hope that he could right wrongs and he could steer the ship in a different direction. So that gives him a huge benefit. Electorally, the problem is that we're coming to the close of the Trump chapter. It's been a decade. It's been a wild decade, but it has been,
a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, you couldn't
but
write
a little
that.
Scary.
But it's been a wild, crazy decade, and it's coming to a close, especially as age wraps around too. I mean, just like that's life. Things come to a beginning, middle, and end. And what do those voters do, and who picks up the mantle, and are they going to love them as much as they love Trump? And that's a big, big question. And I think that Bernie AOC, to kind of tie a ribbon around it, is looking around and saying, okay, maybe if we have an economic populist message, maybe some of those people who love Trump, and maybe they don't know who J.D. Vance is really, maybe they don't know who, Ted Cruz. I'm just making up a name. But they don't know. They're not hardcore politicos. They love Trump, though. They are behind him. They go to the rallies. They buy the MAGA hats. They are Trump voters. But they don't vote in every election. They're not hardcore committed. I think Bernie and AOC are hoping, hey, if we talk about economic populism, we're going to attract some of those voters. It's not really how it works, AOC or Bernie, but I think that's partly what they're going to try to do.
Yeah. Well, I know JD Vance has been doing an incredible job as VP. I know you also support him. So what do you think would be the Democrats' playbook moving forward? Because eventually they're probably going to have to start moving on from Elon and focusing on JD if they're really thinking about, the next election cycle or whoever else is also running.
That's a great point. No, that's very yeah, that's a very great point. They weren't. Well, the JD is more undefined, right? Because people don't. He's not been a public figure for 40 years like President Trump has, or 50 years like President Trump has, and first as a celebrity and then as a politician. And so I think they're partially going to try to define him. They're going to try to sit there and define him. Now, they tried the last time as an awkward guy, which is weird because I worked for Vice President Vance's senatorial campaign in 2022. He's the most normal guy on the planet, like normal as can be. I think they're going to try to tie anything negative in the Trump administration, whether it be the stock market or anything that goes wrong, as being his fault and his responsibility, and that he didn't sit there and stand up. The more hysterical women in the media will sit there and say that he didn't fight against fascism, and they'll probably accuse him of being a sexist or something or other. But that will be, I think that will really be part of their thing, is tying him to Trump, saying that he, is that. And also I've already heard them say that he's Trump but worse, because he's got the brain capacity to really put ideas into motion without getting distracted by attacking the media, like who called him what, or spending time on Truth Social or whatever the case may be. That he's actually worse than Trump because he really believes in it and he's not easily swayed by people. That may be their fear mongering too. They'll be like, this is the living embodiment of Project 2025 or some kind of nonsense like that. So, I mean, listen, to the media, there is no Republican more loved than a retired Republican. George W. Bush was on Ellen DeGeneres dancing and, doing his paintings. And there is no worse Republican than the next one. So no matter how hyperbolic Trump is to the media, JD will seem worse. According to them, they'll say this is really fascism now. And who knows, maybe in 20 years from now, they'll be talking about Trump as a kindly old man who is not nearly as bad as the current Republicans.
Yeah. And that's what was scary about the last 8 years or so is the Democrats, were so unhinged in hating Trump. We saw the assassination attempts of Trump. We saw the legal cases, all of these things. And so in some ways, I don't really know what could be done worse to the next person. I think at a certain point, it's like, this is where the Republican Party is going. This is what our party stands for. I don't know what you guys are doing, but whatever AOC is doing. And so it's not just only Trump anymore. I mean, there are all these, you mentioned young people. There are all of these young MAGA supporters. There are all of these people who are incredibly loyal to the MAGA movement, even just beyond when Trump is here. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Also how Maha goes, because that's kind of its own angle. And I think that's brought in a lot of new people too.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're able to do a lot of good things there, because the administration keeps up this pace at a certain point. I think people will just feel like, wow, for once people are actually doing something who are in Washington.
I hope his deportations actually happen. That is what, if we could get anything from the Trump administration over the next year, the Supreme Court case over birthright citizenship and getting deportations happening, I don't care if Trump sits in his bed eating McDonald's every moment of the day for the next 3 years afterwards, it will be the greatest administration in the history of the world if those two things can happen. Like if we could just
we have a lot of deportations to do.
If we can get that, if we can get the courts to stop holding up these deportations, and we can get the end of birthright citizenship for illegal immigrants, it will be the greatest administration of my lifetime by, hands down. For that reason only, nothing else for that.
Right.
So.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. You always have such great thoughts to share with us. So make sure to check out his podcast, The Numbers Game, and we will talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Danielle.
Well, that wraps up today's show. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to find me on social media. You can find me at Danielle D'Souza Gill on Facebook, Instagram, X, True Social, all those places. Make sure to find me. That's where you can find videos, thoughts, all those things. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, and MAGA.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.